Debbie, I
Yes,
saw
dear.
you on GMB yesterday morning. You were
Ah.
so brilliant. Did
Thank you.
Yeah, it was such a great topic as well about whether singing in the audience through a musical should be allowed. And of course, that is a big no.
Well, at the end of the show, you can get up and start singing in most of these shows, because they have sort of like a medley that you can get up and sing to, and that's fine. But singing in the audience, I mean, really? It's because there's no theatre etiquette anymore, is there? Don't you find that,
No.
girls?
Do you think it's because people watch so much TV, they don't realise they're actually dealing with live performers who, to concentrate when you're up on stage, it takes so much, and then mobile phones go off or people singing. It's just, they're real people on stage. It's not, you're not flicking. There's no remote control, is there? To
Exactly.
Now, I've been trying to do that with Dee for ages. I've been trying to change it.
I know, it hasn't worked.
No.
So I keep coming back.
What do you think,
it myself?
Paddy? What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's people on stage and people in the audience. I think it's incredibly selfish. If you can't hear what the actors or performers are doing, it ruins it. And I do think the pandemic has changed all that. I think people need to get out more.
They do. Get a life. Yeah, exactly.
Can you imagine if all your children were on stage playing these beautiful instruments and somebody knew the tune in the audience was humming along, tapping their feet?
Yes.
No, it's a disaster.
But I never knew nothing like that happened. Say 10 years ago, would you even think 10 years ago that would never have happened?
But alcohol is so readily available to take into the auditorium now.
I think it should be banned.
Yeah.
And food.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It's people when they're drunk, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I've seen people take into whole bottles of wine and a couple of glasses into the auditorium. Just asking that wasn't a children's show.
I think that's a new thing, isn't it? Because I was sitting at a concert next to someone with a great big plastic pint glass of beer, and I was thinking that never used to happen.
Exactly.
No, because now they give you plastic glasses, whichever theatre you're in. So if you've been drinking in the bar, you can just take it with you.
Yeah.
And the whole point, wasn't it, was drinking before the show, drinking, if you like, at the interval.
At the interval.
The kids would get their, if they had to, for their pantos, get the sweeties before the show. They'd have something. And then they'd always get their ice cream at the interval. That was their treat. And now it's just not like that anymore. No, I find it really, really strange how these things have changed. And I wonder if it's because, people are now going to the theatre in stag parties or hen parties. And you can't do that. And unless it's for shows that, like Mad Mike and, Magic Mike, that cater for that. It's as though people don't realise that some shows are just not catered for that.
Exactly, but also the people front of house, all the ushers, they are paid not very much money. They're not equipped to deal with that stuff. They're having to tell people to turn off their mobile phones and all the things that they have to do. A lot of them are actors who aren't working at the moment, who are there doing probably their second job of the day, because actors have lots of jobs, as we know, but they don't get paid very much. And I feel so sorry for them, the front of house staff who work so hard.
Yeah. And even for concerts, my driver was telling me that on the way back, not my personal driver, obviously the one that they sent from GM, was saying that he went to an Elton John concert just the other day, and there was a stag party in front of him, and these guys were having a great time. They were drunk, and he didn't hear anything. So even at concerts, everything has changed. I do definitely think it's the alcohol thing. And I don't see why people should be allowed to bring alcohol into these events. I really do think it should be banned.
And as you said, Debbie, mobile phones going off. And I loved the story that you told about somebody who tried to charge their phone on the stage.
On the set.
Oh my God.
When the show was on.
Oh my God.
I went to see a show with my husband, and there was a lady right next to us who was singing all the songs, full pelt, and he asked her very politely, please, do you mind? And she said, well, I'm my favorite show, why shouldn't I sing all the songs? And he said, well, I've paid a lot of money for my ticket, and I'd like to hear them on stage singing. And she said, well, so have I. It was the most extraordinary attitude. Well, I've paid a lot of money for my ticket too.
Well,
Yeah.
perhaps they should have, as we said on GMB, perhaps they should have special sing-along performances. Actually, I think they do. Some shows actually do. You can actually buy a sing-along performance, and those are the ones to go to. Go to the ones where the audience, where the actors are expecting you to sing along with them, and then you can have some fun, and that would be great. But not when they're doing their normal shows.
Can you imagine it was the National Theatre or something, and you had Olivia Colman or Benedict Cumberbatch, and they were up on stage doing a bit of Shakespeare, and the people in the audience go, "Oh, I know this bit," and they start to join in.
Reciting it. Exactly. It's the same thing, isn't it?
What we got today, we actually have a very, very exciting guest, don't we?
We do. We have a very exciting guest, and it's the legendary Allan Clarke from the Hollies.
Woo!
Woo!
Hello.
Hi, Allan.
Hello.
Hello, Allan.
Hello.
Hi, Allan.
Hi.
Allan, how are you?
Fine. I'm fine. Everything's great here. Yeah.
Good. It's lovely to see you when there's no screaming around.
That was a long time ago.
Oh, I hope not. I think I was one of those screamers, actually.
What exactly were you dreaming about?
Oh, Allan, it's so lovely to meet you properly.
Okay. Yeah.
And we've been listening to your new single, Buddy's Back.
His music is still around. Believe me, Buddy's back.
Absolutely. We give it 10 out of 10, 100 out of 10.
Good.
It's absolutely brilliant. And I know that you played it on the guitar that was gifted to you by the Buddy Holly Association. That's correct, isn't it?
That's correct. Yes, I have it here with me. They gave me my guitar for life, whereas everybody else had to give theirs back after 2 years.
Oh. Well deserved. Well deserved.
Sorry.
Can you tell us the story behind writing the song? Because it's so nostalgic and it's so lovely.
Well, it is, but I didn't write it. Graham wrote it.
Yes.
Right? Because I was recording my solo album, and I'd been talking to Graham about getting back together, and let's do something. And I played in my previous album called Resurgence, and he liked that very, very much. So then I said, okay, I'm going to start writing. And I wrote this particular song called I'll Never Forget, which is about me and him trying to make our minds up about whether we're going to do an album together or not. We've mentioned it so many times over the past 40 years that we never thought it never was going to happen. But he liked that track, so that was the beginning of it. So halfway through, I said to Graham, "Well, you better write something for this album." And just like Graham, he came with Buddy's Back, which when he sent it me, and I thought, well, that's right. He wrote the story of myself and him being together when we were kids and being turned on by Buddy Holly, and then going into all the rock and roll and starting a band. And the whole song is only like 2.5 minutes, and it tells the story of our beginning.
Wow. So what was your beginning, Allan?
I met Graham 76 years ago.
Good. Hang on a minute. Wait a minute. So how old does that make you? I know I shouldn't ask a man his age, but how old were you when you met him?
6.
Wow, you look amazing.
You do.
No, you do.
Right. Yeah. So let's get off the age thing.
Okay.
I'm going to be around a lot longer. No, but I met him at school we moved house, from one district to another. So I was starting a new school, and my mum took me to the class, and the teacher asked anybody in the classroom if they got an empty seat beside them, and Graham put his hand up, and that was it. We've been friends ever. Yeah.
When did you discover that you were both so musical?
Well, we stood on 2 chairs when we were about 6 in front of the assembly at school and sang "The Lord Is My Shepherd." He even sang harmony then.
Oh.
What's all that coming from? But yeah, no, that was our first engagement, I should say. But no, I've been very musical through my early life by my mother taking me to the movies, the pictures it was then.
Yeah.
And all those wonderful shows like West Side Story, 7 Brides to 7 Brothers, There's No Business Like Show Business, Calamity Jane. I mean, every time my mum took me there, I just fell in love with musicals, and the music was within them as well as the dancers like Gene Kelly and what George Sikaris in, you know, I mean, I thought it was wonderful. Not at that particular time did I think that I ever wanted to do anything like that, but I was very interested in music then at an early age because of my mum.
Oh,
Wow.
fabulous.
Those
And you've got a
films
great
were-
camaraderie, haven't you, with Graham? Because I know that I think I read that you when you tell jokes together, he goes back to his roots, doesn't he?
Well, you know, I mean, over the years, you know, Graham left when he's 68. He divorced me. I always call it a divorce. It wasn't my fault, but no, he went off. He palled out with two guys who I knew as well at the same time, and you know, Steve Stills and David Crosby, and he fitted so nicely into those two guys. You know, with the sound that they came out of their, you know, their voices. And I think that most of the time, not most of the time, he's with the Hollies, but later on in the 60s and 70s, when we started going over to America, Graham fell in love with America, and he met a lot of people in California and in New York, and he got the bug. You know, it's one of those things. But I think the big disappointment was that we recorded an album, a single, sorry, which was called King Midas in Reverse, which he loved this song. And our producer didn't like it very much. He said, no, he said, this is it. He said, well, Graham wanted to do it. So we did it. And we had everything on it but the kitchen sink. You know, it really took it to the nth degree. And well, to our sort of thinking of the charts, it was a flop. It came in at 16, 15, and that's about it. So, you know, to us, that wasn't a hit. So, like about a month later, I was with Graham in his apartment, and our two wives was there, Jenny, and then his first wife, Rose. And I could see that Graham was very down about what was happening. And I said, well, let's write a silly, stupid song. So, you know, after a few drinks, that was all. And and we started writing this song. And actually, my wife wrote one of the first lines of it. And then Rose, you know, she threw a little bit into it, and Graham, and then we ended up with Jennifer Eccles. And,
Yes.
and we took it to the producer, and he said, oh, that's more like it. And it made number 2. So Graham was really, you know, he didn't really know what to do. So I think that was the start of him wanting to go to further places with his harmonies, and maybe create a new sound, which he did.
Wow.
An amazing story, you know, you've got. Have you ever looked at something like Jersey Boys? Because I said you said you like musicals, and thought there's that kind of story in us as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I went to see I saw him in America. I became friends with one of them, you know. So the Jersey Boys, they're not the Jersey Boys when they're on there, but you know, Frankie when he's around, he's got a beautiful voice, and had
No,
so
what
many.
I mean is for you to do a show like that about you, about your life. No, you wouldn't want to do that.
Paddy, you're going to ask Allan something about, weren't you?
Yeah, I'm fascinated because I had a career and then took lots of time off to have children, and then I'm sort of slowly coming back. And you did a similar thing where you had a break in 1999 to look after your wife, and then you've come back a second time. How does that feel? Does it feel the same?
Frightening. It really, I had I didn't really think it was going to happen ever. When I left, I left. I wasn't going to sing again ever. You know, that was my decision, that I was going to give it all up and look after Jenny. And you know, after the 5 years passed on and Jenny was okay, yeah, we did a lot of things. You know, I bought a house in South Carolina, which was by a lagoon, and I thought, well, this might be where we're going to be if anything like that happens. And after 5 years, we looked at each other and said, well, maybe we should go back home. Because we were called back because 2 new grandchildren had come on the way, you know, and we thought all that was over, you know. So you know, it was great being there and helping my son Tim sort of bring up the kids and look at the other 2 older ones. I mean, my eldest grandson, I was 30 would you believe? And for 15 years, we were doing just that. We were being family people, going out and meeting other people, none in the business. You know, we've got a great social life going with what I probably call them ordinary people, you know, who are really, really nice people to me. And it was COVID, you know, when that came along, and I got cancer, you know, so I was thinking about, what do I do with the rest of my time? Maybe I should write some songs and leave them to the kids, you know, all that sort of thing.
Lovely.
You know,
So in lots of ways, it must be easier the second time around because you've got all of that background, you've got all that grounding, all that love, all that family life, and you're not going into it like a young person with no foundation. So some ways it's better.
Well, it was great, you know, it was lovely, because I know when I was on the road and Jenny come with me, her parents used to look after our children, you know, so it's been passed on generations about, you know, you've got to love your kids and you've got to bring them up in a way, you know, that they're going to portray themselves with all the morals that you've given them, you know, and then they will pass it on to their kids and their kids. So it's just like, you know, it's that old thing, you throw a pebble in a pond and watch the ripples, you know, and that is the main thing in Jenny and ours life is with our family, is like bringing for a good crew.
Wow, that's amazing, especially considering that you were a massive star in the 60s when, you know, rock and roll was rock and roll, and and there was obviously a lot of temptation around. I mean, how old were you two when you got together? Sorry to keep mentioning age, I don't mean it that way. But...
We met when I was 6, so that was like forever. You know, each day we saw each other at school. He passed his 11 plus, I didn't. So I stayed where I was. He went to grammar school. So at that period, we didn't see as much as each other.
No, I meant Jenny.
Oh, Jenny.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I got off the wrong one. I met Jenny on a blind date.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I couldn't, when I first saw her, when she walked into the room, I'd never seen any woman like her. I mean, she was like, she was just perfect, you know, and I thought, wow, this is a blind date. And so, I mean, I had no money at that particular, I had no money in my pockets. So she even bought the drinks, you know. There was another couple there. So, I mean, after that, it was a slowing progress of seeing each other when we could while I was on the road. But I mean, when I met her, she had a car. I thought, wow. And she lived in a attached house, which I thought, you know, and the father was a head teacher. Well, he was more than a head teacher. He was the head of a physically handicapped school, but, you know, for unfortunate children. And they were beautiful people. And after, I think about 6 months, we got married. And and then it went wild. You know, the 60s were just wild.
So really how many years have you been together?
It'll be 60 years next year.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a great love story. How fantastic that is.
And yeah, I mean, you know, we went very wild in the 60s, but we got through it, you know, unscathed. We had 3 children in that area into the 70s. Still going, you know, touring on the road, things like that. It's just what, you know, when you're on the road, you're just like a normal person. You see, I think I suffer from this, what they call it. No, I can't even think of what it is now, but it makes me feel as if I'm going to be found out any day and someone's
We all
going
do. We all do. It's imposter syndrome. Imposter
yeah.
syndrome.
Yeah, I've had that all my life. You know,
I think most creative people do. Because you think, you know, I'm doing this. I mean, how the hell am I doing this?
Well, so I think of that happening when you're, how old was that, 5 years ago? Well, I don't know. Anyway, you know, after being in 15 years of doing nothing, apart from being enrolled into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Graham and I and the rest of the boys, but the rest of the boys didn't seem to want to do it, which I thought was really, why not? You know, how an accolade like that is given to somebody. You know,
absolutely.
The thing is, Allan, your voice is so iconic. Those songs, you know, that we've grown up with, that are part of our, well, just part of everything of growing up. Everything. I mean, I remember, I loved Jennifer Eccles and Bus Stop, and they were just, you couldn't wait to go out with your 6 and 4pence and buy it. It was just the most fantastic time of music, I think, and the Hollies were different.
The rock and roll was came in very hard after skiffle, because Graham and I skiffle group, there was the two of us called the Two Teens, and everybody else wanted to be in a skiffle group. I mean, like even the Beatles, they were the Quarrymen. I mean,
Yeah.
Eddie and the Dreamers were the Red Sox skiffle group. We were at that particular time, we were the Two Teens until we got to 16 and we got into the Everly Brothers. And so Graham and I started calling ourselves Ricky and Dan Young, because we wanted to be the Everly Brothers, and we did actually get to meet them quite a lot.
Oh, Allan, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. Will you come back again, please?
Well, it's quite short, isn't it? When you're speaking to somebody that's been in the business as long as Graham and I mean, there's quite a lot there. And, good stuff and bad stuff, but,
We'd love to talk to you more.
Yeah, well, my kids have still got their Thunderbirds toys that I bought them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you must tell me their names and I'll send them a T-shirt.
Okay, well, I say my children have them now. It's Tim is 54. Those are my children. Piper is 56 and Toby is 57.
Wow. Okay, that's fantastic. I'll do that, Allan.
Do it for my grandchildren, which are Harry. They're the two 15-year-olds, and then you can do it for Joe and Sam, and they're 30. But they'd love a T-shirt. So
fantastic.
Medium, large, because my grandsons are 6'2" each.
Wow. Take off the granddaddy.
I know. The whole family is bigger than me and Jen. We feel as if we've shrunk over the years.
Well. I'll talk to Lisa afterwards, Allan, and I'll get all the measurements and the names.
No, anytime if you want to do anything like that a little bit longer, of course, just let Lisa know and I'll be here.
Thank you so much, darling.
You.
It's been an honour and a pleasure. Thank you.
Lovely to meet you.
And see you soon.
Best of luck to everybody.
Thank you. And
Bye.
you. Bye, darling.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.
I know. It's really weird, isn't it? It sort of renders me almost speechless with these, amazing sort of rock and roll icons, because they were, in those days, there was no social media. So they were really sort of up there, weren't they? Sort of out there and with no contact, unless you were sort of, I know that Debbie, your mum, looked after a lot of them, didn't she?
Yeah, my mum and my stepfather looked after the biggest stars of the sort of 60s and 70s. And they were idols, if I consider who I knew, one of my favourite memories, of course, is a band going to see them in their offices, which was in Bickenhall Mansions, and there were always kids outside the door because, I mean, they managed the Walker Brothers and they managed, I don't know, Cat Stevens, Jimi Hendrix, you name it. They represented all of these people, and so I was a little girl, I was 10 or something, and I remember this band coming into the office, and they were, as usual, as my horrible stepfather used to say, part of the great unwashed, he used to call them, and they came downstairs and they went, they had a meeting, and then they went back upstairs, and then they got into this really strange looking van. It was all sort of like full of flowers, and I don't know what it was. So I went up to them, as you do, and I said, how was it? And they said, they're not interested in us. And I said, oh, why? I said, what's your name, just so I can remember? And they said, Pink Floyd.
That's what I mean.
That's the only memory I need.
No, and David Bowie was one of their clients as well. So and they used to call him a load of untalented rubbish, I think my stepfather called him. He was brought to them by Tony Hatch, Tony Hatch, the the composer, because Tony produced David's album, the one with the laughing gnome on that album, and he produced it. And so he said to David, you know, you should go to these people for management, because they looked after Tony and Jackie. And so my stepfather and my mother looked after David Bowie.
Amazing.
And I went, oh, how fabulous. And I actually was on holiday with my parents, and Jackie and Tony were there in Portugal, and we spent about 2 or 3 weeks with them every day.
Yeah.
So isn't that, at that time it was just, but they were connected to the most iconic people.
Yeah.
And you know, and yes, I know that you knew David Bowie rather well.
Yeah. So you know, but I was a little girl when I met him. I was 11 when I met him.
Yeah.
So you know, it's one of those things.
But Allan, and the story of him and Graham coming back together after all these years to put things together again and make music together, that's really lovely, isn't it?
I know.
It's funny, and looking at his face, even with his white hair, you can see him. You know, he still looks like him, doesn't he?
He was just so good looking, wasn't he?
Yeah, but that voice,
And still is.
you never forgot that voice, and giving up, you know, his career to look after his wife. You know,
Yes.
hey, that's a man, isn't it? That's
quite something, isn't it?
yeah.
And it's
Quite
funny, with
true.
an amazing rock and roll career, and that's what he talked about the most, was his family. And I thought that was a real mark of someone very genuine. I thought he was an extraordinary person.
Yeah, because
Lovely.
you can't take your career to bed with you. It doesn't look after you at night. It just pays the bills, and it gives you your ego something, but it doesn't give your soul anything. And with that, I think.
Oh, I love that, Debbie. I love that. You're so profound.
Yes, I'm very
Sometimes.
profound today. So I'm about to leave the profanity. No, I'm not about to be profanity. Well, you know, whatever.
Profanity, that's what I meant to say.
Yes, profanity. We will see you soon. Thank you for joining us. We've had a lovely time, haven't we, today?
Oh,
He
we
ain't
have.
heavy.
He's my brother.
Bye.
Bye.